Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H event space. You're tuned into the joy of the journey. This is part 6 of the series where the wonderful Sony artisan of imagery, Chris Orwig, joins us and he breaks it down. What is photography about? What is life about? What is this journey about? Where's the destination? Is there a destination? I don't know. Chris, what's going
Is
on,
there a
man?
destination? Yeah, I don't know. But it's so great to be here and so fun to get to talk about this and to have an awesome guest and to really dig into this whole idea of how does, in some ways, I was thinking about how photography makes life better, right? And there's certain things that kind of drag down on life. Like I recently came back from a trip. When you have heavy suitcases and luggage, that's like this funny burden. But when you travel light, which I did this last time, it kind of makes life better. And I think photography somehow is this secret hack, this method, this practice that improves life. And so we'll talk about that today as a way to hopefully inspire you to explore how to create better pictures and all that. And then a little check in on me. I have a cold. I'm getting better, which is great. A lot of stuff's going around. But what I was thinking, Derek, is I jump in, show some photos, and then I'll introduce our guest that way. And then Bradley will jump back to you. Does that sound good? I'll do a
Sounds
little
good.
share screen. Let's do
Awesome.
this. Let's get to some images and let me know if you guys can see this website, Bradley's work.
Let's see.
Thumbs
Right
up
now,
on
I
that.
got Bridge up. Bridge up
Oh,
right
you
now.
go. Okay, okay, okay. Let me do. I'm gonna stop share. I bet I shared.
Take two.
Take two. Here we go. I have two monitors. Um, so how's that now? Is that
There we go.
beautiful images? Good, thank you. Um, so Bradley, well, one, I'm just gonna go to your bio because there's a couple lines, but I love you talked about storytelling, and then you talked about creating projects that resonate deeply, driven by a passion for creating timeless and cohesive visuals. So when I think of your work, Bradley, I think of it in this really elegant, timeless way. It's almost like a dream a little bit. Like it's how I would imagine this kind of world would be. It's a world I'm not super familiar with, but it has this component of like beauty and nature and machine and human and how do all these things interact and kind of the design elements and the details and just love what you create in all these ways. And let me just exit out of that and we can look at more images as we go. But just to kind of give a sense too, you have a lot of fine artwork just so kind of people are tuned into it. I love how you can kind of see it in where it might land and doing these really huge prints. A lot of images don't work big, but I think yours do. And then I love this kind of stuff too. Obviously, I'm always a sucker for a really good portrait, but just has this like nice feeling to it and this narrative and storytelling back to what you talked about there and capturing these moments sort of along the way. And how do we do that? As a quick side note, love that one. Orlando Bloom and Katy Perry trick or treated in our neighborhood this year. And so all of like our kids and our friends have pictures with him. He did not come up to the houses, so I didn't see him because I was handing out candy. But it was kind of fun to have that kind of celebrity moment in the neighborhood. But there's just this grit, there's this strength, there's this even just kind of this sense of possibility. I think that's what photography does for us in a lot of ways. And we'll see if I can just turn off audio here, just so that we don't do that. But you get a sense on this kind of imaginative approach um, to these like possibilities of this even happening, which is so beautiful. Okay, so there's a lot of visuals that gives us a sense. On top of all of that, Bradley's one of my favorite people on the planet and really resonate with his approach to life and stuff. So it's always embarrassing to have people see your work and to have all the praise. So that all pushed aside, if you meet someone, let's say on the airstrip, just we'll go to that context, and they say, "Oh, hey, who are you? What do you do?" How do you answer that yourself?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think we all try to always figure that out. How do you quickly tell somebody what you do? And uh, I say I'm a photographer who specializes in aviation. Sometimes I'll say air to air. Some people don't know what air to air is, so
What is that? So we
I'll
know.
default to
Yeah.
aviation, but air to air is being in an aircraft, photographing another aircraft in flight. So um, depends on who I'm talking to. Sometimes, obviously if I'm in the aviation world or something like that on an airstrip, most likely someone that I'm talking to knows what air to air is.
Right.
So I'll say that. But yeah, I just a photographer who specializes in air to air aviation because obviously not all my shots are
Yes.
in the air. So
Yes. Yes. I love that. I think it's always interesting. I mean, just to play with that question a little bit, is how we define ourselves and how people can hear something in multiple ways. So on a plane not too long ago, they said, what do you do? I said, I'm a portrait photographer. And they said, oh my gosh, I took my grandkids to Sears and we got the best photos. You must love making little kids smile, which is not the portraiture I do, right? But that's like what in her mind, that's what image
sure.
was conjured up.
Mhm.
And I just said, yeah, I do, because you can't like correct people.
Sure,
But
sure.
it's funny, there's kind of this like, and then even with the air to air, there's this idea of what it is, and then there's the craft of what it is. And we overlapped at Brooks Institute way back when. It was a photography school, great place. And
Mhm.
what I think you and I would both find were these people who are in love with the idea of photography. And I'm just going to go to travel. They love the idea of traveling to Italy and doing all these photographs or working for these campaigns and doing, but then the work of a photographer is very different than the idea. And that
Mhm.
weeds a lot of people out. And so I imagine an air to air, it's cold, it's uncomfortable, it's loud. Tell us about that. I mean, the images are so idyllic and so even quiet and imaginative. What's it really like up there?
Yeah, great question because it is very different and my career and my path um, for years wasn't like you showed those images of Orlando Bloom and Josh Serlin of Black Bear brand riding motorcycles and stuff. And, so especially back at Brooks, like loved being in the studio, loved being in an environment, whether it was using natural light or strobes, something, but that's the path that I started on. So then to flash forward and find myself in an aircraft where the door has been removed and I'm strapped in, and there's wind, there's dust, there's heat, cold, noise. Yeah, it's all of those things, and it's turbulent and it's unpredictable, and it's a lot of things. So it's funny. I can look at images and just kind of chuckle inside, knowing that when I took that, it may look so serene, but there were so many things going
Yeah.
on. And your gear has to be minimal and everything you bring up has to be tied down, strapped down, tethered, something. And that can turn into kind of a spaghetti factory of cables and harnesses and seat belts and things like that. So it's chaotic. It's very controlled chaos, but it's very chaotic up there at times. There's times where it can be very serene and beautiful, but when it's go time, sometimes you'll hit pockets of turbulence. Obviously, shooting in hotter times, hotter climates, and things like that causes more um, turbulence. So sometimes you're just getting tossed all over the place, and pictures aren't turning out because you're trying to run a slower shutter speed for a plane that has a propeller on the front, and you want that to kind of get lost. You don't want it to be
Right.
stopped in motion. So any little bumps and things like that just cause everything to go blurry. So
Got it. Got it. And hearing you talk about the spaghetti factory of all the cords and cables and the elements and maybe you mentioned this as well, but I imagine exhaust on top of weather. And I mean, you have, because there's airplanes and all
Mhm.
this flying around you, that what's interesting is if something goes wrong, you can't just be like, hey, hang on a second, you guys, I'm going to fix it. Right. Like, so there's uh, like you said, the gear has to be simple, but there's I imagine and it's funny, we've never talked about this, so it's kind of fun to talk about. I imagine you have to really, really, really be in the moment
Mm.
because you can't kind of be like, hey, wait a second, I'm going to go grab something else, or hey, my card's almost full, let me change it out, or so there's this, and I feel that in your photograph. So I'm curious to hear you talk about presence
Mhm.
in that controlled chaos environment. What is that like?
Yeah, well, one, you can't be afraid of heights, that's for
Okay.
sure. It it's it is beautiful just being in the air. I mean, anybody who's on a commercial airliner wants to, take photos looking out the window.
Yes.
Uh, and what I get to do, it just takes it a little further. Like I said, with the doors off, strapped in, so you're forced to be present because you're getting blasted with the air, the sun, the cold, the heat, all the things, the noise. So it's like being at a rock concert. There's just so
Mm,
much
mm,
going on uh, with all of your senses that you're forced to be there. But you're up in the air, so you get to, and when we're shooting, we're trying to shoot in beautiful locations. So obviously, you can have a plane or a helicopter or aircraft that's beautiful, but put it in the wrong landscape in the background, and it's kind of ruined. So we're
right.
usually over some beautiful landscapes, cityscapes, whatever it may be. So it's fun and beautiful just to look around from that perspective, but then to
Mm,
also not have anything in front of you, no window, no glass, nothing. Get in the slipstream and look out.
wait,
Dangle
what's
your
the
feet.
slipstream? Sorry.
So the slipstream, when a door is open, we'll just say on a plane, the wind that's
Yeah.
rushing past that. So it's calm for the most
Mm,
part, where obviously it's drafty, and but you're not getting blasted directly with wind. So the wind's
okay.
going past that open door.
Right, right.
So it's a very fine spot. So you can you have to be careful, especially when you have headphones on and things like that. You may need to look out a little bit, but I thankfully haven't had it happen.
Mm,
But the wind will catch your headset and pull them right off and out the
mm,
window. Again, why everything needs to be strapped down, because it's
right.
it's a very fine spot where that slipstream is. So
Yeah.
um, you don't want those headphones going off, landing on the ground, hitting someone, something, or hitting
Yes.
the plane that you're
Yes.
trying to photograph. So there's all that safety that goes into it as well. So,
Right.
uh, but yeah, being in the moment, yeah, it's beautiful to be up there and look at whatever you're flying over. But then two, especially when we're heading out to the spot where we're going to photograph, there's
Yes.
downtime. So it's just amazing to have an aircraft that's feet from you, with nothing
Mm,
in between you, no, no wall, no door, no window, nothing. And it's just there, and
yes.
see the pilot, and they're looking at you because we're flying tight and in formation. So it's just a wild experience. It's dangerous at the same time.
Mm,
Uh, you know, Flying and then having doors off and safety harnesses and flying in
yes.
close proximity and all that. So
How
all
does
of those things kind of force you to be in the moment. Yeah.
how does your wife feel about the safety side of it?
Uh, she's never said anything to me,
Okay,
so
okay.
I think she's okay.
She's
I don't know.
supportive.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she's never expressed any concerns or anything like that.
Yes.
But I'm always sure to text her right before I go up,
Yes.
text you as soon as I land, and keep the worry down. So yeah.
Yeah. And then how did you, because I imagine some people might look like, to me, I look at this kind of work and think, wow, I could never do this. Like I could never, it's sort of like, I guess, I was in Switzerland last week, which was amazing. You look at some of these mountains with no trails on them and you think, there's no way up this mountain. And then some mountains you can see the trail and you can be like, oh, I could do that. So maybe like, I'm just going to go to like underwater photography. You get certified, check, I am certified. You go to a place with a lot of great visibility, check, you get an underwater housing, and then you maybe add supplemental lights and you watch some tutorials. And I could go and do it, I feel like I'm just going to make this up, but 3 or 4 hours of like preparation, I could go photograph underwater. But this one, I'm like, I can't see a path there. Like, how does one get there? And what advice would you have for someone who would love to integrate this into what they do? Um, I know it's kind of a big question. I imagine
Sure.
it's a big question, but I'm curious.
Yeah, and it is the question I get asked most often is,
Right,
I want to do that. How
right,
how do
right,
you get
right.
multiple planes and pilots in the air and go do that?
Yeah,
I my path is quite different
yeah.
than how, or at least how I tell people to try to pursue it. But I years ago got asked or referred by some friends for an off-road truck racing team, and who were doing like the Baja 1000 races and
Okay.
races
Yeah.
in the United States and stuff. And
Okay.
they had a chase helicopter, and so they wanted me to come photograph, film the race, and from the ground, from the air. And at that time, I had never been in an aircraft, or at least filmed from an aircraft.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that was the first time. And it was a helicopter, which I had never been in. So I was very apprehensive. Or at
Yeah.
least, I mean, I was all for it, but I was just
Yeah.
like, what's this going to be like? Uh,
Right.
and it took about 10 feet in the air, and I was hooked. I was like, okay, I get it. This is
Yeah.
amazing. So I was able to get some education,
Hmm.
real time doing that.
Yeah.
Works well. It doesn't this one, doors were on and everything, so it was a little bit different. But I got quite a bit of time. I filmed several races for them, so I got quite a bit of time in the air. And then that owner ended up liking me and my work so much that he kind of opened the door to come in full time, which ended up being not only the off-road racing but aviation,
Yeah.
which was his big passion. The
Okay.
off-road stuff was just kind of a, a sidebar to when he's not flying. So,
Right.
um, but so I started working for him, and he had, which was Lewis Air Legends, and I owe my entire aviation career to them, and Rod
Yeah.
Lewis, for giving me the opportunity. But he had has the world's largest privately held aircraft collection,
Okay.
which is around 35 planes.
Wow.
And so working with him for a few years, I was able to create a portfolio that would have taken me years or a lifetime to
Right.
accomplish. And he was kind enough to, hey, if you want to keep doing this, I'll keep, this going and get you in great spots and connect you here and there. And
Yes.
he was very pivotal in how I got to where I was. So I just then took that portfolio of his planes and just started posting them, marketing myself.
Yeah.
Really, honestly, through Instagram was like my main source of just posting stuff. And then sure enough, people, clients, brands started reaching out and seeing my work and liking it, and that just started the domino effect. So, but that's how I got started. Typically, how I recommend people doing that is with anything else, you have to just immerse yourself in the industry you're looking to pursue. So, in the aviation world, I mean, you don't need to become a pilot, but
Okay.
it's great to have. Um,
Okay.
I would like to start working on that even after all these
Okay.
years. I don't have my pilot's license.
Okay.
But that would be great to have. But going to air shows, going to local events, just any and all things. Again, just immersing yourself in the industry,
Hmm.
and showing your desire to photograph. So obviously, if you um, are in densely populated cities where there's lots of airports, international, smaller FBOs and things like that is helpful. It just allows you to network easier. And if you have friends and things like that, start with what you have. If you have a friend
Hmm.
and just a simple, Cessna aircraft, photograph it.
Right.
Use that as your test, because obviously it's hard to, unlike a car where you can get you and your friends and go down the strip who's got a cool car and hang out the window and get some rolling
Yep.
shots. And that's a great way, but you can quickly do that on a whim. But with aviation, it's much harder because hey, I need two planes because you got to be riding in one, photographing the other. I need two
Yeah.
pilots, um, fuel's expensive,
Yeah.
there's weather conditions, and even still, then it's a matter of, are the two pilots that you're with, are they, uh, can they fly in formation? Do they feel
Right.
comfortable doing that? Or can they fly close enough to where you can actually get a decent photo? So there's just a lot there, and a lot of how you get into it. But yeah, it just really comes down to trust and pilots knowing you enough and trusting you, and having and finding the opportunities to get up there.
Right. So in a way, it's like all areas of photography. It's you, what I'm hearing you say, and what I've experienced. Um, like I'll just go to, let's say there was a time where I was photographing these really legendary surfers. And people would say like, can you give me their cell phone? So like, Kelly Slater or something, can you give me their cell phone number so I can call him so I can photograph him? I'm like, no. They're like, well, how do I do it? And I'm like, well, it took me a couple years. And same kind of thing. I went to events. I connected with him personally. I connected with his agent. I was obviously passionate about surfing. There were two fundraisers that he hosted that I went to and did photography for free, and maybe a couple other things. And eventually, I got to work with him. So it's that whole path, I think, of immersing yourself, showing your interest and passion. Obviously, you have to show some degree of skill at some point, that you can deliver goods. You're not just enthusiastic,
Mhm.
and that those goods are, how do we put it, like valuable to someone else. Some photos, they're like, we like them, but well, the question is, does someone else? And so making sure we're hitting that. So I love that. And then just to play around a little bit, I'm going to share my screen and show some photos of another friend, Chris Burkhardt, who does aerial stuff very different.
Mhm.
And I want to comment on that. And then I want to hear your comment on yours, because I've often thought about this, but I've never asked you. So this is kind of fun to do this. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully I'll share the right one this time. And then here we are at Chris's site. Can you guys see this okay?
Yep.
So Chris used to come to speak to my classes before he was like famous on Instagram, before Instagram. And he said, basically what I do is a small person in a big space. And he does the same thing from the air. So he has a big space and then he has a small plane, whether it's Hawaii or Iceland or whatever. And again, this is oversimplification. Here's maybe, it's an aerial shot, but it's small person in a big space. And we could probably find other, let's see if there's any other plane photographs. Well, here's a plane maybe on the ground. That's kind of a neat one with this old thing. But the whole idea is for him, this kind of, let's do this one. We'll do one more. This idea of these very, 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 very small planes and then this environment. But then when I look at your work, I think about how it's like, you're like really like this one, I feel like I could almost like throw a rock at the plane. I mean, I know I couldn't because of speed and things, but I feel like I'm like right there. I'm right in the in the moment. Or this one I already showed. I mean, there's a lot of photos I love. Like this one, I feel like I could wave to the guy, and he would wave back. Or there's ones even more up close, or these ones too. I mean, we do have a big environment, but again, I feel like there's this unique connection. And then like this one, I've always wondered about that. I'm like, I don't know how, like, is that remote? I don't know. But that's like so close. It's like a little dicey. So I'll stop
Yeah.
sharing. And then at some point, maybe I'll have you share too. But just curious for you to comment on, um, maybe Chris's work and how you experience that, and then how that contrasts to yours. Because one of the ways I really believe we have develop our own voice is to appreciate other people's stuff and then find our own path, right? And it's easy to like mimic someone else. It's hard to create our own style, but you clearly have. So talk to us about that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Chris's work obviously great. And I
Yeah.
love the small planes, because if you took them out, you lose the scale of what you're looking at.
Right. Right.
Um, and it just makes it all the more grand and wild and adventurous. So yeah, I even saw one of, a ship, and there was this gigantic ship, but
Yeah.
it looked miniature, but then it was next to an iceberg, which made it look even smaller. And it just, that uh, sense of scale he nailed,
Yes.
by
Yes.
showing that. With my work and my job and task is for a lot of them are for the manufacturers of the aircraft or the brands and what they're trying to convey. So they need to be close. You want to see the details. You want to see you want to see the exhaust, heat waves coming out of something, all of that. And you're right with a lot of them. We are extremely close. Not only can we see each other and wave to each other, but that's actually how I will signal to them when I need them to move. So kind of going to earlier, so I'm in the back. I can't speak directly to that pilot. So I have to relay to the pilot who I'm flying with, and then they tell that pilot. So it's this telephone game. There's a delay. But once they get close enough, which we talk at length about before we go up, there's lots of way more planning. There's like 80% planning, 20% execution when we're up there. And we come up with hand signals and dialogue about that. So once they come in close, I can just, if I need them to go up a little bit, I'll just tell them to go up. Or down or whatever they need to do. And we've talked about it so they know the hand signals and what I mean. Because it's just quicker for them to be able to see that we're that close, get it instead of relaying. So there's that element. But I mean, trying to capture those moments, capture a bit of, like, there's one shot that was on there of a Kodiak plane that's flying, not very far off the water, but just giving it that sense of Kodiak. It's very much an adventure
just
plane.
to interrupt, do you want to share your screen? I'm pretty sure we can do that. And if not, Derek can help us out, because I think it would be fun to hear you, even just because we're mentioning an image, and hear you talk a little bit about your work. Let's see if this will work. And I know I'm just so everyone listening, I'll kind of fill the space for a second, but with these conversations, I don't send questions ahead of time. I want them to be organic and authentic, and I want to just dig into what comes up. So Bradley is, and all the other guests are gracious enough to just roll with me as I come up with these ideas. And then if you have questions for Bradley on this, or in this way, in this type of photography, or which I'm going to say, just comparing it to Chris's work, I'm going to say this is more commercial aerial photography, where I would say his is more, I use the word adventure aerial photography. Now, both of you guys sell fine art prints, so there's a print component to that side of the business as well. But obviously very different planes. Like Chris always, I feel like, could be wrong, but it's always a Cessna of different colors. It's like red, white, or yellow, or something. And then you're really working with vintage planes, modern jets, and everything in between almost. There's like a biplane in there. I love the one with like the teeth on it. I don't know what we call that, but I feel like I had a toy like that as a kid. P-51 or something is what comes to mind.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
P-40 Warhawk, yeah.
Okay.
Can I share my screen from my end?
Yes. Well, let's see. And then if not, Derek, maybe you can hop on and help us out a little bit.
Yeah, Bradley, you should be able to.
Yeah, hit the share button and see if it gives you any luck. And I'll just keep talking also why I was interested in the proximity and how I think we can learn from different people. Is there's a famous photography quote, which is, if your photos aren't good enough, you aren't close enough. And that we can achieve closeness, like Chris achieves it with a wide angle lens, and he gets himself really close to stuff. And to him, that gives him the sense of like, I'm there. He also loves awe and wonder. So that's why he has small people in the big space. But you don't feel like he's not shooting with a 600 millimeter lens. He's usually shooting pretty wide, which is interesting. And then I would say, Bradley, you're getting us close by using a little longer focal length, maybe, and by being like right there, like you can hear the roar of the engine sort of in the images.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry I can't share.
Okay.
I went to do it and it wants me to quit Zoom to
Okay. Well, why don't I share?
Because it's got some.
I'll share here, and then we'll go to see if I can pull back. Let's see, where are we? Here we go. Maybe you lead me to the photo.
Sure. Let's see. Yeah, go ahead and scroll down. I think I
just keep going.
Keep going.
Okay. And if there's any other images that come out, we can, or that come to mind, we can click on those.
There you go. On the left there, that reddish plane over the water, far
This
left.
one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so just a little, a little sense of motion on the
Yeah.
water. But again,
Little, all this.
yeah, the propeller, but just yeah, like we were talking about earlier, just the Kodiak is an adventure plane.
Okay.
That's what
Yep.
they're all about with that plane. So, you
Yeah.
can throw a hammock in there, you can throw dirt bikes in there, you can go camping, it's an amazing plane. It's kind of cargo plane, but you could put seats in there. And so that was one shot of hey, let's get close to the water. I forget how,
Mm.
maybe we were, 30 feet off the water.
Yeah. Yep.
But
But
going,
close, close.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and the faster you're going, the closer you get to stuff, the
Yep.
more kind of insane it feels. But
Yep.
but trying to again drag the shutter to get the prop blur there, but
Yeah.
then sense of motion and adventure, right off the water, seeing the water a
Yeah.
little bit motion blurred as well. Um,
But we
yeah,
get the pilot and we get all the kind of I'm just gonna say the color in this plane is pretty what's coming to mind, word my kids use a lot, bougie. It's like very expensive. This is an adventure plane, but this is not like your little Cessna adventure
no,
plane. This is
yeah.
this is a nice there's a quality to it. Maybe I feel quality in this picture. Um, is there another image you'd love to talk about while we have them around?
Yeah, if you go
Just
all the way up top,
okay.
I think it's the top left. Yeah, so that biplane over.
Yeah, I love this one. Man,
So that's one of my
just gonna
favorite
zoom.
images, favorite experiences.
Yeah, tell us about this.
So it's a good friend of mine, John Slickbaum, and he's a former fighter pilot for the Air
Yeah.
Force. Works for Polaris Dawn, and just an amazing guy, an incredible pilot. But that's his plane, a 1944 Boeing Stearman,
Wow.
and so we've actually done that shoot a couple of times for a few different reasons, and a few different brands, but I just really wanted to capture I wanted to recreate the past with this image. So
Yes. Yes.
that being a 1944 plane, the iconic New York City, um,
Right.
and there's just I just love old black and white photos from New York. But then there's some amazing shots over New York from that era of silver planes. And since they're black and white, the color of that plane just pops
Mm,
for that. So we were trying to recreate some of that.
mm,
And this was just one of my favorite ones that popped out. And it, especially with the Empire State Building right there, it just kind of
right.
has that, if you just glance at it, the goal was that you would glance at it and not know that it was modern or old.
Right. Right.
Obviously, if you start looking around, you'll see some modern buildings, so
Yeah.
but just at a quick glance, again, just kind of recreating the past and doing that.
Right.
That was really fun, and shooting in New York in that corridor is wild. There's you can only fly over the water. You can
Okay.
cross over Manhattan, over Central Park,
Okay.
and there's helicopter tours below you. There's traffic coming at you. There's commercial flights going over you. It's just
Wow.
just wild and chaotic. And then, then there's at least two of your planes there. So, and you're trying to fly in formation there, so there's lots of, uh, there's a co-pilot that's on the lookout looking for other aircraft in our airspace.
Right.
So it's just, that's one of those shoots where you have this pretty image, beautiful, iconic city,
Yeah.
a beautiful plane, but outside of that, to get that shot is just, lots going on, chaos.
Yeah. I love it.
Mhm.
I love it. Maybe I'll stop sharing for a second. It makes me what comes to mind is just that, um, in this series, I've been focusing on how photography enriches our lives and all these things. So I want to ask you about that in a second, but also how photography is really hard. And that back to this idea of being a photographer and then the art and craft and work of being a photographer are two sides to what we do. Or I loved how you talked about was like maybe 80% planning and then 20% execution. And um, every kind of photography has a different mix, right?
Mm.
With that. Um, but it's important to know, and I think if people just kind of talking to people who, if they're getting discouraged because it's hard work, I mean, what I always say is, yeah, keep at it. That's why it's so good. If it was easy, it wouldn't be as satisfying as it is. And I do a lot of portraiture, and those never come easy for me. I'm always nervous. I'm always unsure if it's going to work or not. I'm curious. I'm creative. I have craft at my side, but there's mystery. There's uncertainty. There's and it sounds like in this space even more so. I mean, like you could kind of there could be planes coming. You could have to go off course, and you have to, or some weather pattern changes, or who knows what. So back to that earlier thought, which is photography enriches life. How has it enriched yours?
Yeah. Um, yeah, another great question because I just think of all of the places I've been able to go, the people I've been able to meet,
Yeah.
which have turned into friendships, um, is just great. And that it's the experiences and the people, which is where the enrichment comes from. Uh,
Mm,
and that is, I can't remember the exact, it was just, a friend in passing talking about
yeah.
photography, and they were just kind of saying, they're like, it's amazing how holding a camera in your hand will get you somewhere, whether it allows you to get into places that
Mm,
someone not holding a camera wouldn't be able to get into.
yes.
It's simplifying it, but pursuing it takes you on adventures,
Yes.
whether they're in the air or on the ground, or on the water, whatever it is.
Yes.
But those adventures come with other people
Mm,
along for the ride, or people that you bump into along the way. That's what it's the experiences that I always remember.
mm,
And I think that's what I guess, almost use photography as the conduit to get to
yeah.
those experiences and to have those adventures.
Yes.
I have no idea how I would be able to see and do all the things I've gotten to do without a camera, without being a photographer. So it's led to a lot of great memories and experiences from the people involved. So
I love that. I love that. One of the ways I've often thought of it is this idea that the camera is kind of a passport that allows you to access regions, people, places, and things that you just that like to your point, I mean, same thing. There's no way I could have done this without a camera. And the camera is a great door opener.
mm,
And it's kind of like having a dog. We have a couple dogs. I have to take my dogs on a walk. So the question always is, am I walking them or are they walking me? And they get me out there and I see the sunrise almost every day because of them. And I think the camera has that energy as well. It's almost like it gets us out there because once you have it, once you've invested the funds and all that, you're like, okay, I gotta take care of this. I have to lean into this.
mm,
Um, so what advice would you give to the person who, I'm just going to play with this, it's a holiday season, is getting a new camera for the holidays, is maybe new to photography, is excited about photography, is just doing this because of the passion, because of the possibility, because of the way it gets us out into the world, all the things we're talking about. And this person, like most new people to photography, myself included, is photographing everything because that's what you do at first. You like get the camera out and you take a picture of the carpet and the tree and
yeah.
whatever. But what advice would you have to this person so they could speed up, expedite their process of getting to the good stuff?
Mm. Yeah, and I've been there, being the one
Yeah.
who's taken a picture of, pumpkin and whatever else.
Yes.
But I think uh, I think it you might go after what causes you to have some sort of emotion.
Hmm.
What what you're kind of chasing, without the camera in your hand. What do you enjoy?
Mm,
Maybe the example that comes into mind is, maybe you love movies, and you get a camera, and then you find out that you could be a unit photographer on a movie
mm,
set.
right.
So that's one thing, but I think it just is a matter of what what causes you to have some sort of positive emotion, what in life
Mm,
makes you pause for a moment
mm,
and
mm,
think a little further, a little deeper about what you're
right.
looking at, what you're experiencing.
Mm,
And if that is something that you're constantly chasing, whether it's that sunset, whether it's the mountains, a plane,
yeah.
any of those things, anything that drives you to have some emotion, I think uh, is what you should look at or be interested
Yeah.
in possibly pursuing. I mean, because I distinctly remember when you're talking about photographing everything when you get a camera, and I remember roughly around sixth or seventh grade, grabbing my dad's film camera and just running around until I was out of film. And it was, of my feet while I was skateboarding down the hill. It was of those pumpkins. And it was funny because it was golden hour. It was at the end of the day. And I just
Yeah.
remember being able to look at these just simple things. But even as a kid looking at that, and it had a feeling to it. I think subconsciously knew that, the lower sun, I was like, wow, this really
Mm,
looks pretty. This is
mm,
I was able to, I guess, just be present in the moment to see the situation that I was in and find the beauty in it. And I think that's something that anybody who might be getting a camera or new to
mm,
photography can chase after, because that's what I'm always trying to do with my photography, is taking a photo that will evoke some sort of emotion from somebody on the receiving end. Uh,
mm,
Even if it's a plane.
right.
Again, trying to, recreate the past over New York with an old plane, or showing the sense of adventure of plane flying over the water.
Mm,
Uh, all of those things. So I think just kind of pursuing, at least that's what I do, is I try to pursue the experiences and the emotions that come from that, whatever that subject
mm.
matter is.
I love that. Another thought I had is this idea of like I mean, obviously, what environment do you want to be in? Because the type of photography you do puts you out in this ecosystem, you know. And then what kind of moments do you want to relive? Because one of the beauties of photography is that we get to have the experience once and then also again.
Yeah.
And then we actually I imagine it's almost like being like a film studies student. You watch a film, whatever it is, I'm just going to say like, well, it doesn't even matter. You watch the film and then you watch it a second time and you notice the camera angles, the set
Mhm.
design, the costuming. And then you watch it a third time, you gain it more. I feel like in photography, that happens to me. Like I take a picture and I'll think, I like this, and there's something here, and then I revisit it. And the ones that last, somehow I'm getting to know, I'm gaining something more with the passage of time. And so one of the things I really encourage people is like, what do you want to surround yourself with? You know, they always say like we're only as good as the people we surround ourselves with. And I think with imagery as well, like is it dark and foreboding? Okay, if you want to surround yourself with that, go for it. Is it um warm and thoughtful and kind? Okay, then you're going to surround yourself with that, or whatever it is. So I think that's a fun way to kind of get curious about how these images affect you. And I don't know if it's true for you, but for me, like I have some prints over there. When I tack up a print on the wall, I kind of live with it. And it affects me much differently than when I share it on Instagram,
Mhm.
when I just click it through it in Lightroom. Because I see bad, 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 good, bad, bad. Then I work on the good one, and then I move to the next one. But I'm not allowing it to communicate to me as much as once it's a print, if that makes sense. So,
Mhm. Yeah, no,
um,
I agree. I love obsessed with coffee table books of
okay.
photographers, uh,
Yes.
prints and things like that. I love
Yes.
I get to print my work out and somebody can enjoy it. There's just having it physically in your hand and being able to see it again. Yeah,
Yes.
outside of software with the nose next to it surrounded. Um, yeah, there's something I think just simply romantic about it. You
Yeah.
can just take a step back and enjoy it. I mean, just like
Mm,
a painting on a wall at a gallery or something, you can stare at it. You're not just going to walk by. You're going to sit there and maybe, you'll read the bio about how it was done, who it was done, when
right,
it was,
right.
why, and all that. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I totally agree.
love it. And then Derek, if you're here, because we're kind of entering the end of our little window of time, and it's always fun to kind of have Derek come on and provide some of his reflections or questions, or we can see if there's any questions from the audience as well. Um, Derek, what's coming in for you?
For once, I sat here and I just enjoyed. And because I think for me, it's what's so cool about these is I love when I see work that, how do I explain this? It makes me love photography and hate it at the same moment where I'm like,
Mm,
I can't do this.
yeah.
Like, there's people out here doing amazing stuff. And it's funny, Bradley, that you brought up that picture because that was the one picture that jumped out. Obviously, being a New Yorker, I looked at that shot and I'm just like, it's so different. And being, from here and you see the helicopter photos that people take, of over the city, and you see the pictures. My son's always taking pictures of airplanes out the window. He's obsessed. I have your
Mm,
website bookmarked to show him. Um,
mm,
and it was just different. It transported me somewhere. And it's funny, it's this is why I love when talented photographers, when we get to have them on and have them talk about their work, because I
mm,
was just having this conversation this morning with another photographer over coffee about how you do need context to images. We all grow
mm,
up and we hear, oh, a picture shouldn't have to have any words attached. It should say everything. It's like, no, you should have context. And sometimes the
mm,
context is just hearing the photographer talk about what they were thinking or what
mm,
approach they're taking. And it's funny when you were talking about how if you just you look at that image and it's timeless. And yeah, you'd have to start looking around. Okay, this is must be newer, and you can date it by the buildings in there, but that's not what it's about. It's about that feeling when you first see an image. And when I first looked at that image, there was just something about it that just captured me, and it captured New York so beautifully. And it wasn't about a particular building, or it was just everything. The choice of, the black and white with the silver. It's like all that, it was just resonating with me. So
mm,
this is my very, very, very broad appreciation for people who are truly talented and truly passionate. I feel like I've moved more towards the people whose work I feel, rather than I look at something that's just like, okay, it's technically good. Yeah, you know what you're doing. You know your way around this.
right.
You're great in your genre. And people whose work you look at, we talked a little bit about it in the green room, Chris, with
Yeah,
Bradley's work, how it's just like you look at it and you really do feel it. It's that
yeah.
work that you're like, damn, I aspire to have my work like that. Like I want to,
Yeah.
it's not about how your work looks. I want to feel that way. And I want people to feel that way when they look at my work, the same way that I'm looking at this work. And it's just, it takes you somewhere. So very long,
No,
circular
I love it. I love it.
way
Can I add
around,
on
but
to that?
Yeah,
I mean,
thank
totally.
you.
first of all, I feel like I need to grow a mustache because both you
I
guys
was
are
going to
looking
say,
so great. I mean,
Bradley's
you know,
what I've been trying to do.
Bradley's is like the
Mine is
best
like the lip.
mustache. Yeah, yours
Yeah.
is, I mean, but
Mine
that's
is a
pretty.
very
Just
pedestrian
watched a
attempt.
lot of Magnum PI when I was younger, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're nailing it though. But I'm gonna have to see what I can do. But then the idea of I mean, even with the mustache, I think you see a cool mustache, makes you want to grow one. You see photography with feeling, makes you want to have that. And then I'll just add one more layer to that is I want to create a wall hanger. I want to create an image that is timeless, that is your work. I feel like it's subtle. So it's not like too in your face. It has this kind of lasting power. So for me, my takeaway is like, that's what I want to strive for. Because sometimes I print my work big, hang it up, and I'm like, it's not a wall hanger. It's a good photograph. Could be good in a book. Could be good in for the client. Client loves it. They use the heck out of it. but I've yet to create a wall hanger that we might call that fine art. And so I love how your work, like I feel like it's all fine art. Like I can't really tell. I'm like, which image was he taking just for himself or for the client? And when that line is blurred, that's a beautiful zone to be in. What was the word you used? Slipstream? Is that or airstream or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah.
Slipstream. That feels like that. And my late mentor, same thing. He would do commercial work and sell it as fine art. And it so that's something that's very aspirational for me. So thank you for sharing that. And I think this was just kind of a celebration of great photography. And you know, we didn't necessarily share your site, but it's just your name. Or I think it's your name. I didn't even really look at it. Is it your name or is it yeah,
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
Bradley,
Bradley Wenzel.
Bradley, Wenzel,
We'll get it dropped into the
Wentzel. Yeah.
YouTube.
And then just because I gotta, you know, give shout out for all my friends, but like if anyone needs prints, your fine art prints are stunning.
Thank you.
And I'm so grateful for this. And last question for you is there anything else you would like to share or mention that you didn't get a chance to?
Mm. Um, I think just because I think about how my career evolved, and I think just to say yes to opportunities, um, because you just never know. I mean, I distinctly remember sitting with my friends who told me, "Hey, do you want to go film, photograph an off-road race team?" You know, and I just remember at that time I was just kind of tired, and I was like, and I'd been to these races before.
Yeah,
They're hot, they're dusty, they're long
right.
days, and part of me was like,
Yeah, yeah, I know.
it's like I knew what I was getting into, and I was like, oh, I kind of, physically, I was like, I
Yeah,
didn't want to, uh,
yeah,
but I was just like, yes, it's something different, to go work with this team.
right,
Let's, and just from saying yes to that led to getting to know the owner, leading to going to work for him full time, which led me to all the planes and everything, and then everything
right.
that inspired after that. So I love being able to re-engineer how I got to certain places and how it all started from just something like that, from saying yes. And
Right.
it's not going to be great every time. You're going to say yes to something and be like, why did I say yes to that?
Yeah.
Uh, but you will be more educated even on the ones where you're like, why did I say yes to that?
Mhm.
You'll have more knowledge, more education about whatever transpired with that. So I think just say yes to opportunity, because you just never know what experience you're going to get, who you're going to meet, where it's going to lead to. And
Mm.
sometimes that stuff can take years to finally see what comes from it, what planting that seed, meeting someone, handing the business card out, saying yes to something that you didn't really want to photograph, but it led to something else later. So I think just
Love it.
say yes to experiences. It will just grow you as a human being, and it will only, I think, can only make your work better, because again, you will learn from either that experience, but photographically as well. Like, it was any time that you can be in an environment where you're asked to provide an end result, a photograph, and you
Yeah.
have that pressure, whether it's small or a lot,
Yep.
will help you. You'll learn from that experience and what you could have done better, and all that. So just say yes, even though it might come with some caveats.
I love it. I love it. Lean in, say yes, and you never know. I mean, that's so true. There's so many things. And it's kind of funny being a teacher. We kind of cheat a little bit because we're always telling after the fact what happened. But I feel like that saying yes brings us back to the beginning of like not, because basically when you teach something, you're like, this happened and here's how it happened. But when you're at the beginning of your trajectory, you're saying yes to a lot of things, and that's what's opening up these doors. And it's teaching you skills also that you can't generate if you say no. I remember saying yes to photographing my friend's IT company headshots. These guys did not like being photographed. They were not photogenic. And it was one of the greatest learning experiences I ever had. and I couldn't have done that any other way, right?
Yeah.
And kind of saying yes, and then maybe the other thing I'm hearing in what you're saying, and then figure it out along the way. I remember my first aerial thing was a helicopter with the door open. I said yes, and then I went to my friend, a different friend, and I said, "Do you have a harness I can use? Teach me how to do this. What's my shutter speed? What focal length?" And I figured it out, and so I think photography is sort of that say yes and then figure it out as you go type of craft. Would you guys agree with that? Is that kind of fair to say?
Or what's going to come if you
Absolutely.
say no? If you
Yeah.
say no, nothing else comes after that. And
Yeah.
it's, it's funny, Chris. I'm going to point it out.
Yeah.
Um, photographer that you bring on,
Yeah.
all of your guests, all these people that you look up to, they all
Yeah.
fit so perfectly in your orbit. You hear the same types of approaches
Yes.
and the same kind of mentalities that everyone believes in. I always find the same themes coming in, like perspective,
Mm.
where there's the photographers who are just like, no, if it's not for me, screw it. I say no. I turn it down. And it's like, no. Well, it's like, no, say yes and flip the perspective and say, you know what, I'm going to get something out of this. If I don't like the job, I might get a connection. If the pay isn't good, it might be the next person that I get out of this, or I might, take something that I thought I hated and I found something that I really liked, or kind of opened up something, or I said yes and then I couldn't do it, and then I gave it to a friend, and the friend now built a relationship on this, and then I, helped build out a friend's network. Or
Right.
like I said, you can't start anything with a no.
Mm.
Stuff only starts, opportunity only starts with a yes.
Yep.
Right. And maybe it's like in photography, it's yes and. Because what I feel like when I'm shooting, I like take the picture, is even that's a yes to a moment, like something's happening. And then you say, and now let me kind of figure it out. And let me figure it out. So there's this iterative component to the craft of what we do, literally the practice of photography, but then also the profession and the experience and all those things. It's like this yes and type of approach. Like you said, like yes, or even I can think of some jobs I took and it was like, yes, I said yes to it. And I learned I don't want to do that kind of work. And that's
Yeah,
like
so,
great to
so then
learn.
there can be the power in saying no at some point. I'm not
Yeah,
saying
yeah, yeah, of
not
course,
saying
of course.
yes on everything. I mean, I
Yes,
think you'll get to a point to where
yes,
you can pick your battles. But
right.
yeah, Derek, I think you're dead on. Like you can't get anywhere by saying no. You're not gonna move forward in what you're trying to accomplish by saying no to something. So, but
Yes. Love it.
yes.
And then maybe the other theme with all the people I admire, like you, Bradley, and all these other photographers, is they are masters at the art of combining the way they live and the way they capture the world, and that life and photography are connected so closely. And I think that really is the secret. I know we're wrapping up this series soon, but that's kind of the secret is exploring how to align your own life philosophy, ideals, values with the photography that you're doing. And that's what, at least what I found, where the best work comes from. And so Bradley, thank you for being a guest in that way. And I think that's all for me. And what an awesome conversation.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on. This is great. Love any time to be able to geek out about photography and talk about stories. It's the best.
And then maybe the last question is, how can I get up in an airplane with you? I mean, is there space for that? Is there possibility for that? We'll talk about that offline. We still have to do, and I want to document you shooting too. I want to figure that out. I know we've talked
I
about
can
that.
make that happen. Yeah.
Okay,
Bradley, if that
okay.
happens, I need the
It's
BTS. I
Yeah,
need to
yeah,
just
sure.
relay
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It's
yes,
like we said, it's be ready. It's going to be hot, cold, windy,
yes.
dusty, turbulent, loud. So if you're ready for that, we'll do it.
We'll do it. It'll be
I
amazing.
love that. I love people who take on these challenges. It's like, man, it makes what some of us do look so pedestrian.
Mm.
And it's like, man, if I freak out at some of these things, I'm like, I would have an anxiety attack, going up there. We'd probably be 30,000 feet. I'm like, oh, I forgot my memory cards. I forgot to pack batteries. So, oh man, this was great. Bradley,
Yes.
awesome work. I want to thank you for joining us. Chris, you always bring on such
Yeah.
talent. So I want to thank you for just being such a wonderful presence on here. And then you always step it up a notch with who you bring on. Of course, Sony for hosting this wonderful ongoing series with Chris. It is wrapping up soon, but there's more Orwig. he hasn't gotten rid of us yet. I haven't
Yeah,
scared
yeah.
him off. So
More exciting stuff coming.
definitely, definitely more in the works. And for all of our viewers out there, we always thank you guys. Please support the speakers we do bring on. We did drop Bradley's website and Instagram into the YouTube chat. So definitely go check his work out as well. And that is all we got for you for today. Another edition of the B&H Event Space in the books. Catch y'all next time.